All right, guys. For this lesson, what we're going to do things a little differently. So, at the end of class tomorrow, which the lesson is bases of power and influencing others, I'm going to assign you some homework, which is going to be reading the student readings as well as going over the slides. So, we'll go ahead and begin that now. And what you'll do is you'll watch this video, you'll do the reading, and then for class on Thursday, which is the emotional intelligence lesson, we will use the majority of that class to have a discussion about what your thoughts of emotional intelligence are. So
Here for Janice. You've probably
we'll
heard
go
of
ahead and skip
IQ
this
or
video.
intelligence quotient. If you haven't,
We'll watch it maybe on Thursday. All right, so basically in the lesson we're going to talk about what is emotional intelligence, um, and you're going to hear about this pretty consistently during your time as an Army leader. Basically, Daniel Goleman, who's kind of one of the four foremost experts, I guess, on emotional intelligence, says that IQ and technical skills are important, but emotional intelligence is the sine qua non of leadership. So I don't really know what sine qua non is. So we'll do the old Google sine qua non, and it says it's an essential condition, a thing that is absolutely necessary. So basically, it's saying that you have to have emotional intelligence as a necessary part of leadership. And I would agree with that, especially since we've talked about leadership and mission command are human endeavors. So he breaks down emotional intelligence into five components: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, social skills, and empathy. So self-awareness, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Um, you need to know yourself pretty well in order to be an effective leader. That does take time as you are exposed to more, knowledge and experiences and things like that. Your self-awareness is going to increase with age. So, but it is important to kind of know what your strengths and weaknesses are and continue to work on those. Self-regulation, just being in control of yourself. It's important to not be affected by external stimuli. So for example, getting upset easily, because you're going to be frustrated and you're going to be upset in your job. Your subordinates should not be affected by your lack of ability to self-regulate. Motivation, you guys had that lesson last week of motivating others. It's also important to have personal motivation, and I think we definitely touched on how important intrinsic motivation is as opposed to extrinsic motivation. You'll see down here it talks about organizational commitment, and I think that is pretty important. We've talked about the essential characteristics of the Army profession being competence, character, and commitment. And so, if you're not committed to what you do, it's definitely hard to be an effective leader. Empathy. I would say the best way to explain empathy is putting yourself in someone else's shoes, basically. So a lot of people confuse empathy with sympathy. And I think sympathy is generally associated with feeling bad or feeling sorry for someone when they're going through a hard time. Empathy is more of you trying to understand what someone is feeling, and trying to imagine how you would feel to give you some insight into what that person is going through. Obviously, everyone's different, but empathy is just a tool to kind of put yourself in the mindset of what someone might be going through. Social skill, and I think that one's pretty self-explanatory. Um, just understanding that leadership is a social process because it is human interaction. It's involved with dealing with other people, and you may consider yourself someone who is awkward socially, but if you're going to be a leader, that is something that you're going to definitely have to work through. So we'll skip that video. We might watch it. So here in a moment, you guys are going to take the Myers-Briggs personality test. And so what I want you to do before you come to class on Thursday is I want you to go into your student reading number 2, which is where we're going to start. And let's just try this. Just click this link. Yep, student reading 2. So you'll click the link, and then Carl Jung was a psychologist, and Briggs Myers and Jung are kind of the So the test is right here. Jung and Briggs Myers are kind of the originators of this type of test. So go through and click these questions. I think there's like 55 of them. So answer them honestly, because this is valuable feedback for you, as part of the self-assessment part of being emotionally intelligent. 64, sorry, I lied. So you do all 64 questions, you score it, and then it's going to give you one of these 16 personality types, and we'll talk at length about these. All right. So when you go into you do that, you figure out what your personality type is, and you'll go through this reading, which is a pretty lengthy reading. So there's some takeaways here. All right. Number 1, being an extrovert versus an introvert, and the definition of each. An extrovert maintains affinity for and sources energy from the outer world, whereas the introvert is the other way around. Their general interest is directed toward their inner world, which is the source of their energy. So basically, an extrovert is someone who enjoys, people and experiences, on the outside of themselves, whereas an introvert would just as soon be alone, thinking, and they draw their energy from their own inner world, as it says in the definition there. So you all should identify with one of those two. Some of you are very social and you like to be around other people, and you don't like to be alone. Some of you love to be alone. But it's important to remember that, again, leadership is a people business. All right. So if for those of you that are introverts or self-described introverts, that is something that you are going to have to deal with, and we'll talk more about that during the actual class discussion portion, as well as throughout the semester. Sensing is concrete, actual information versus intuition, which they are going off of their own understanding of the world. All right. Thinking is making decisions based on logical reasoning. Feeling is an individual's base for decisions on feelings and emotions. All right. So some of you might that might resonate with you as well. Moving down to the different categories. All right, we talked about the 16. And then we've got judging, means that a person organizes all of the life events and sticks to plans. Perceiving means that he or she is inclined to improvise and explore alternative options. So what does that mean to you? That means that if you took that test, you will have been assigned one of these 4-letter combinations. All right. So what I would like you to do before class is I would like you to find your letter personality type, and let's say, for example, you were an ESFJ, right? I don't know who might be an ESFJ around here, but let's just use that as an example. So you would find your personality type, and you would go ahead and read through that. All right. An ESFJ is an extroverted, sensing, feeling, judging person. All right. So whatever you end up being, read through that portion of it. Read this entire document, but really focus on what you identify with, and be prepared to talk about that on Thursday. All right. So we're not going to go too much more into that. And then the next reading is more elaborates on the components of emotional intelligence. So, when you think of a perfect leader, what comes to mind? Bless you. Temper never gets out of control. Has the complete trust of staff, listens to team, easy to talk to, and always makes careful, informed decisions. Right. So that's the type of leader that we would all aspire to be like. This is the definition of emotional intelligence. It's the ability to understand and manage your own emotions and those of the people around you. A leader who shouts at his team when he's under stress, or a leader who stays in control and calmly assesses the situation. So who do you think is more likely to succeed, right? Or who would people more likely want to work for and work with? So we talked about the 5 elements of emotional intelligence being self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And it just kind of breaks down each one of the 5 in this reading. So go ahead and read it. Here's some key takeaways. Self-awareness. Being self-aware when you're in leadership also means having a clear picture of your strengths and weaknesses, which I think I mentioned earlier, and it means behaving with humility. All right. Self-regulation. Self-regulation is about staying in control. All right. So, you don't necessarily have control of the external environment around you. You do have complete control over yourself. So self-regulation is pretty important when you're in leadership. Motivation. We already kind of talked about motivation. Extremely high standards for quality of their work. All right, a motivated leader. And you should also have high standards for your subordinates when you're a leader. Empathy. We talked about this. They have the ability to put themselves in someone else's situation. All right. And then social skills. Just being able to communicate with other people. Understanding that you are part of a group of people. You may be the leader, but you are a member of a group of people. All right, and being able to communicate is pretty important for social skills. So, with that being said, go ahead and go over the readings, do your personality test, and be prepared to discuss on Thursday in class. We'll use the class time to discuss. It's called a flipped classroom, which means that you do the readings ahead of class, and as opposed to me going over the slides during class, we will discuss what you guys went over prior to coming to class. Okay, so see you Thursday.